to Upstage Downstage with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
Things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
Take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain. "42 Balloons" is an uplifting musical by Jack Godfrey and is inspired by the highly improbable true story of how Larry and his partner Carol Van Dusen convinced their friends and family to help Larry achieve his dream of flying. So Stephen, what's it all about?
Using a lawn chair and approximately 42 helium-filled weather balloons, truck driver Larry Walters defied all the odds to make his lifelong dream a reality and fly 16,000 feet above Los Angeles. Featuring an irresistible 80s-style pop score, 42 Balloons questions how far you would go to make your dreams come true. Is the sky actually the limit? And what happens if it doesn't all go to plan?
But first, our post-show opinion!
This musical deserves to be high in the sky.
This was definitely 42 Balloons and then some.
So with all that said, let's
Set the scene!
42 Balloons, Richard, at the Lowry Theatre in Salford.
But why
Would you like
has it got to
set
be
the scene?
42?
Well, actually, the inside note says it's possibly 43.
Really? We've been duped.
We have been duped. However, it's 42 balloons.
I mean, I
And it sounds
can't
better.
confirm there was 42 balloons on stage either.
No, I don't believe there was. Did you
Anyway.
try and count?
No.
No.
Why am I talking
Oh, that's
posh?
that's. I don't know. But
Why
that
are
has-
we doing this?
That has actually. Well, we always go a bit silly. That has actually just reminded me of a tech thing to bring up.
Oh, dear.
Remind me, balloon.
Oh, dear. Oh,
So,
yes. I think I know where you're going.
You know.
Oh,
Okay.
I know.
So, hold it in and let's discuss the set.
Okay, so this was in the Keys Theatre in the Lowry building.
Okay, you're being
That's
specific.
I'm being specific because in the Lowry Centre there's two different theatres, and I must say it's a lovely space. It's a lovely performance space. It's actually quite unique that actually wherever you sit, I'd say from sort of the middle of the auditorium, you don't have a bad seat. It was in a horseshoe setting for the audience to sit and watch. I mean, I would say that both left and right of close to stage, you'd probably see more of the wings than you would the actual production. But anything halfway back and around, you see quite a lot and really well. But yeah, so we walked in and we were literally presented with black curtains and and there was 80s music playing in the background. We didn't really have anything else to go on when we were waiting for the production to start.
The curtains opened. Let's cut
The curtains
to there.
opened, and what we saw was a huge, almost. I'd probably say it's the inside of a
Balloon.
of a balloon or a big silo. That it was just like you were in a vast domed space. There was no real.
Imagine that great big white balloon from the prison.
Yeah, it's like you
And it was
climbed
like
in
a
it.
theatre in there.
It's like you climbed in it.
Yeah.
Basically, and it was just a big white space. It was really there was nothing there apart from just vast whiteness.
It made the set look quite intimate as well because it shut off a lot of the backstage stuff.
And it was actually
And-
quite close to the audience in a way. It didn't.
Yeah,
It's-
I think that's. Is it concave?
Concave.
Concave.
Yeah.
So it's concave.
I'd-
The base of the balloon, isn't?
And I'd probably
isn't it?
say
and then it
only-
goes up.
It only seemed to take half the stage. It didn't go back far at all.
No, exactly.
So
yeah.
it kept the action really close to the front to the front tab of the stage.
And I think with the whole set being angled down and curved, I think that gave it allowed them to all the actors on the stage to go higher.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of having any ladders or anything like that.
And it's quite interesting. The other thing we've not mentioned is there's little
steps.
little almost steps, but like they're more like a footrest or what you'd see on a climbing wall. They're more like a something
it's
to
that kind
put
of thing,
your foot
isn't it?
on rather than a big step or a shelf. It's more like
But all
little
positioned
Yeah,
in a way where it's where they're going to hit their cues to stay or leave.
They weren't all in one area. They were just sporadically put everywhere. And both the entrances to the space were right at the front of the stage, so there was just two walkways off that were hidden by two circular, I'd say curved screens that hid those the entrances and exits off as well.
And when it started, it began with the curtain and. Would you say a lower curtain? Because
there was
there's like a picture frame, and so it all opened up at the same time. So the square.
So at the bottom there was what we didn't realise, there was a hidden tab that came up to frame the space, just so it was quite high up in the stage area, like in the middle of the stage, rather than than at the bottom half. It was actually
so the tab lowered and one raised,
and two came in from the side, and it created a picture frame in the middle.
Yeah, I think that's what I was trying to say, but that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, it was. And all you saw was the chair and balloons around it, literally at that point.
Would you say it was like a pastiche of a typical 80s music video where it had a bit of smoke and stuff?
Yeah,
because they were doing the intro.
It was the narration, the opening. It was the setting the scene, the
prologue,
as we're trying to do now. They
did it much
more to the point, and much more, we might say. I think it's because so much happened in this production. It's very hard to contain it in one little small section. I think sometimes. Yeah, because
your brain wants to race off and talk about everything else.
Yeah, and
but at the very start, it's specific.
And the curve on stage, the actors ran up and down the space. It was very similar to how Starlight Express does the back of their stage, because they're on roller skates, they'll go up to the back to come back down, and it keeps the momentum. So it's very similar in style by having that curve at the back of stage. It pushes them naturally back to the front of stage, without, it's a very similar way of performing. It's just they didn't have roller skates. They were all, they were all running about on it. So
a good person of Sichuan that had sort of a curve on it.
It's more slides as well, wasn't it? It was like two big slides.
Yeah, they didn't really go halfway up and stop.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we will probably say here is there was a live band on stage, but
hidden.
But they were hidden.
Yeah,
and it was quite clever because this production relied heavily on projections and effects in a way, which we'll go on to further down the line. But behind this sort of siloed screen effect, the middle section raised toward, like, during the middle of the production to reveal the full band.
Yeah.
And it was really nice to see that, because at first you didn't even know they were there, because generally productions in smaller spaces,
they're under the theatre, aren't they?
They're either under the theatre or they're in another room off the side, and their conductor is just somewhere in another room. So their band is not always anywhere near the stage. They're still playing live. They're just in another almost sound studio, because there's a lot of other productions that do it in that way. But it was nice to actually see the band and see them appear, and hold it back and show you later down the line rather than straight away at the start, Yeah. I think that would have detracted from the production as well.
So throughout this musical, there's different scenes, and they have a lot of things that do come into this space. But let's just call it a balloon, balloon of the space.
Yeah, I was expecting some hot air coming up from below, because it was like you were inside a hot air balloon. When you've seen people run inside a big hot air balloon, it's very much that.
So through some of the scenes, you have like not a bar, but like a bar table.
Yeah.
For when they're in the pub, and then you have like theatre seats that double up for a sofa.
Yeah.
You actually have the lawn chair later on.
And there was things that came down from above, so there'd be like the odd signage or a window frame to become the set of blinds behind and be an office.
And those blinds do turn around to be something that they project onto as well, which was useful.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
They used everything more than once, almost in different ways, and
and I think with the projections and them projecting everything onto the whole of the whole set, they didn't necessarily need to have too many things in this little space anyway, because there was a lot of choreography and huge dance numbers.
And I will say this wasn't just It's not really a technical issue. It's more the fact that this was projection mapped across the entire space really, really well. So it was proportioned perfectly. So all the scenes that they projected on this big white space really fit in the space well. They the proportions were right. All the things they used it for were right.
With this being a new musical by Jack Godfrey, what are your first thoughts, or what was your first impressions before we saw the show?
I was apprehensive because I think it's all new musicals, you have to go in with an open mind, so you never know what you're going to see until you walk in, but you're having a musical thrown at you as well. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's very difficult to take something on so quickly, and to if you've never heard the songs or don't know those things, it's very easy to lose some of the dialogue, because with a musical it's full on, and I think that you just don't know what to expect. And I think that all I will say is I feel that there was a lot of confidence about this before they'd even started the production. When you walked in to the main area, where the drinks are and where the merch is, I feel that it had some confidence about it before you'd even walked in.
There was a lot of promotional stuff, as well as the chair to take photos in.
But it didn't feel like over the top shoving it in your face, It felt confident, and I felt that it was intriguing. It led you to want to see what's going to happen, more than anything. I didn't feel like they were saying this is the best musical ever, this is the... They didn't need to. They knew it was good. They just needed you to see it. And I think that's sometimes important with these sort of productions.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I didn't particularly know what it was about when you suggested going to see 42 Balloons. When you just get that song 99 Red Balloons,
yeah, exactly.
I was just taking the mick out of that.
Yeah.
Because
we're
going to see 42 Red Balloons, and that stuck in my head. I don't know why. It's just...
Well, no, it's what you associate with something like that.
Well, it is, but I didn't particularly take it seriously as well, because
exactly.
I didn't necessarily know what it was about.
No.
I didn't read up on it. I kind of forgot that we were going to see it as well. And then once we did see all the stuff, I thought, there's a bit of money thrown at this.
Yeah.
There's more of an effort
exactly.
made into this.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of when we went to see Unfortunate, with all their paraphernalia all out.
It's like the branding
as well.
The stall's set out ready, isn't it?
That's exactly what it was. And so when I saw that there was T-shirts and stuff like that, or whatever, or pin badges, I'm sure there was.
Yeah.
It was like,
Tote
okay,
bags.
this is more advanced than what I thought it was.
Yeah,
With it
exactly.
being a new musical, I didn't think they'd go to such the extent, and I'm kind of glad that they did.
Yeah, exactly, totally.
On after viewing,
yeah,
I can see why they had such confidence behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
So this musical was based on real events.
This is a musical that's based on Larry Walters' life. So we see the whole story of really the sensational news story, really.
And the book was written by Jack Godfrey, who also did the lyrics and the music at a very young age. And from the research I've done, he heard about this lawn chair Larry, and his accomplishments, and he thought that's like an incredible and exciting, sort of a weird story. And I think this is 6 years in the making of him writing this, and for this to be his first ever musical. When we talk about how great a musical is, I think this is up there with some of the best, considering it's like a simple idea. Whilst the narrative is about this guy called Larry wanting to achieve his passions in life, wanting to achieve that dream of getting up in the air because nature's decided that he couldn't really see well, so therefore he couldn't be the pilot that he wanted to be. He'd make himself his own pilot, and by that sheer determination he managed to do that with getting all the equipment to fly his little chair not fly, and it's not just a story about that, but a story that everyone can relate to, and I certainly did. Near the end of it, when it was getting to me, it was about your passion. You've got to do something, and I think that was just it's a brilliant story to tell, and I think that it suited to be a musical. I mean, it could have been done as a drama, or I don't know. I just think having it as a musical
Yeah.
lends itself so much to getting the emotions across and making it more, because the story is quite simple. I think sometimes the simplest stories make the best musicals.
Yeah, and I think as well it wouldn't have translated as a play. It would have become monotonous and boring. Whereas this added colour and life to it by making it a musical. And something I like with anything like this is you actually feel like you learn something. You feel like you want to know if this is a true story, because at first you think, no, this can't be real. And actually, when you sit in the interval and you're looking it up, I know from some of the coverage that they've done from the musical itself that actually searching for Larry Walters actually peaked on Google as a search because of the musical. People were actually Googling it faster than anything else at that point in time when it first became, was first opened. And it's really interesting that happened, because that for me is a similar feeling I had with Sylvia the musical, which was about Sylvia Pankhurst that you didn't really know about. They all talk about Emily Pankhurst, but you don't talk about Sylvia, which was her daughter, that actually did more for votes for women across the country, but has never been spoke about. And this is a similar thing where you're going, oh, I'm learning something new from this, and you want to find out and maybe watch some of the YouTube documentaries or anything that covers this story, to actually realise that the musical is so close to actually what happened. And I think that's the
sort of beggars belief in a way.
Yeah.
And I think the great thing about this, in the prologue, when they're singing about it, they even comment and say it actually happened. You can look this up after the show. And I think that's such a good little
it's like, we know you will. You know
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, one thing I will say is we don't know what the actual final result of this production was like. We saw it in the first few preview nights of the production, but for me, it was a complete musical at that point anyway. So, I don't think it'll have changed much from what we saw.
No, absolutely not. And if we go and discuss the writing of the book and the lyrics and everything, I think for me, there's nothing I would change about this. I think everything worked as it should. Yeah. I think it was snappy. It held your attention. And the lyrics and the songs themselves were just sublime. I came away from this just singing their songs, and that's exactly what you want in a musical. And to compare it to the next show that we went to see, which was Wicked, along with the previous show we saw, which was Unfortunate, I could understand and hear every single one of the lyrics in this show. The diction, the projection, and everything was spot on. And I loved the fact that because it was set in the 80s, I think it was 1982, they featured the live band and they made it like an American 80s pop band.
It was definitely...
The music was just spot on for everything. And what was clever about this is you knew exactly when you needed a bit of a break from the music, because there's so many songs in this, it just takes you all the way through with more songs than anything. And when you had Carol's mum singing, it took a sidestep from the 80s pop rock to a bit of a jazzy sort of a song, and there was it was like a bit of a not a lull, but it was like a sidestep, like you normally follow someone. So when we're watching this, we're thinking it's Larry's story. Actually, it's not. The person moving the story along is Carol.
Yeah, exactly.
It's her story. So by having her mother there, and for Carol's mother to have a song, it really does relieve the tension, because it was a funny song and it was completely different in tone to the others, but it was vital.
And I will say as well, because it started in the early 80s, there was definitely some late 70s influences in some of the songs, because you always find a crossover. Music's never just stuck in that one era. You got the little nuances of some of the late 70s experimental bits through to the Mum's Ballad, like you say. It has... There's so many... it was a period where, yes, the 80s was becoming iconic in its own sense, but you'd still got the crossovers that were happening. So I think you'd still got that 70s sort of American rock style blending into the 80s. This production knew the era. The musical knew where it was placed musically for the position of where it was. It's obvious that there's been a lot of research into what music was out there at that point in America, So I think that's really interesting when you step back from this as well.
Yeah, and I think with the Carol's Mother's songs, the whole jazz things, it's used as comic relief as well.
Yeah, it is.
For driving the narrative along, because she's still talking about Carol.
Yeah.
So even though she's indirectly singing, and Carol's the one that's directing, directing, but she's directing the narrative. Yeah. It still works by moving the story along.
And I think it was also good because their 80s style, and I know probably going back to where I've come from, but it wasn't specifically New Romantics, or it wasn't specifically punk, or it was
definitely like
very American
rock pop.
80s
it
rock
wasn't
pop,
like synthesizers in or anything like that.
No, and
that was like the it started in the late 70s, but this was more.
It moved through, yeah. It had that feel,
pop.
Through it, yeah.
Mm. So in this musical, there is about 34 songs.
Yeah.
And some of them are like interlude musical moments of like scene changes or something like that. And that's quite hefty going, really, when
it is, yeah.
Often it's probably about 20, isn't it? But
yeah, I think some of the interludes were some of the narration bits, or some of the bits from the chorus, as it were. You'd got your main characters, and then they were surrounded by a chorus that became other characters, became narrators, they were all part of the production, in different ways. So one minute that the characters would go off and come on as bit parts, but then the next minute they'd all be doing something as an ensemble. So it was well cleverly put together, really.
You can clearly tell, or at least I can clearly tell, that this was written by somebody who likes and enjoys writing music, rather than it being a playwright first and adding songs on to change it into a musical afterwards. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
From the get-go, it seems like this was written from a musical point of view straight away.
I almost feel like, have the songs been written before the dialogue, in a way, or before the music came, were the lyrics put down to be quite specific in the placement of where they tell the story throughout. It's quite interesting, really, to maybe break that down, because some of the songs are so poignant that it'll be interesting to see if that was the whole point of it. They wrote that side of it first,
Yeah, that's what I feel like as well. What do you think about the direction of this one then, Richard?
I thought it was directed really well, and quite creatively, really, because you're telling a story that actually is...
This was directed by Ellie Coote, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Like you know her?
No, well, yeah, I've met her last week. No, honestly, I think that the clever use of space, and it's obviously a production where the director, the set designer, and everybody involved were all involved in a way to create this piece of theatre, really, because the set pretty much dictates the direction, because there isn't actually a lot of space.
No, but there's a synergy there.
You can tell they've worked together on this, rather than there's obviously been a creative process. Maybe the writer's been involved as well, because I can see that there must have been a really strong vision to do this production, because
I think Ellie and Jack work well together.
Yeah.
If this is their first musical together.
It's clear that they've stuck to their... I've always talked on previous episodes where it's very important that when you create something, you've got to stick to your guns, and if it's new theatre, you've all got to stick to one vision, because the minute it goes off on tangents, that's when you can see things going wrong.
So give an example.
Well,
Like,
unfortunate a little bit where we've changed the direction of it,
Change the set,
change the style, but and also change the storyline a little that made it go a little bit awry. But then also things like,
My Beautiful Laundrette rings a bell here.
well, also my
With that
best Marigold Hotel,
Great
set,
That was a great set,
but really bad direction. You know, it's really important that people work together to create theatre sometimes when it's something new and has to stand out against the crowd. Because let's face it, any theatre is about making your production different to everybody else's. It's about becoming something that people remember. And we left the theatre remembering this rather than thinking, oh, well, that was like an amateur production, or that was... I don't want to discredit amateur productions at all on this. What I mean is amateur in the sense of, oh, we'll just throw a bit of setup, it'll be all right.
I think when you say amateur, sometimes it's more like the people involved don't always understand the context of the script.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes a lot of things get left out because they haven't understood that. Like, for example, The Crucible.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the marketing that matches with the set, that kind of matches with the style and the whole theme that you're going for.
And then it feels like the set's an afterthought. And it's like everything's important. Even if you've got a minimal set, the set is should never be an afterthought. It should be part of the actual makeup of the production.
And the fact that the set was basically inside a balloon.
Yeah, exactly.
Goes to show that works, and it does work. It doesn't need to be anything other than that.
No.
I mean, if they didn't have that in the style that they've done it,
because I'll be honest,
how else would they have done it?
For me,
it would have just been a simple, normal somebody's house, somebody's back garden, and that would be boring.
I mean, let's face it,
it's like Jekyll and Hyde,
Home I'm Darling. You know,
we're comparing them to
with sunlight coming through different rooms and really badly thought out sort of elements just to create the space on stage, and you know, it just felt like, oh, we've got the set, just use it again and let's just chuck it up.
But the Jekyll and Hyde one in the courtroom where they brought everything inside there,
exactly,
that worked really well.
It did. That's exactly.
And this is quite similar.
This is very
bringing
similar
everything inside one space,
but also hiding it in spaces that you wouldn't expect. And I think with this as well, I always look at productions that if you take certain elements away, would they still work? If we didn't have the projections in this production, it would still work as a production. It would hold its own. It's got strength in performance because of the direction, because of the way that it's put together and choreographed.
And the musical songs themselves.
Yeah, and the actual core of the production, the musical itself, allows you to paint pictures around it. So you don't need extra stuff. That helps and that elevates it, but you can actually see that the core of the production is there.
Yeah. If, for example, they had issues with the projection on any other night, it could still go on, and you wouldn't need that.
No, you wouldn't. No.
You know,
you could still have the elements that you need within it, and I think
that just shows how strong the direction, the acting, and the musical just work.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
For me, the direction, I thought it was brilliant. I thought the choreography was spot on as well. You know, sometimes when you watch these shows, you think, oh, why was that done like that or whatever?
Yeah.
I was thoroughly entertained in this. There was nothing that went wrong. Or if I felt like, oh, why have they gone round there? You know, your mind's working at my mind is anyway, working overtime. They're going to come back out with something else and such and such and such and such. And it did, but it wasn't as if anything was like badly done.
No. And
I don't mean that just to sound like...
No, and I think as well, to pick up on the choreography side of it, it wasn't just about the choreographed moves around the stage.
Oh.
It was more the dance style was very of its time. It was very 80s. Even the interludes and the bits that happened when we were doing scene changes and things, it still felt like you were still in the 80s. So there was almost the elements of little bits of breakdancing bits or little bits of movements that were all 80s-esque, really. And I think it worked really well to still keep it within that zone, you know.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say before we move on to the next segment?
I don't think so.
Then let's move on to the next segment.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're
Here
for the drama.
So the majority of this play was an ensemble. The four main cast that didn't really have additional roles were Carol, Larry, Carol's mom, and Ron. And then we had a plethora of ensemble cast.
Yeah, and it really was a core production about those four peoples, really, within this setting. The
ensemble as well, whilst they doubled up and did several other roles, they were equally as strong.
Yes, they were.
Singing all the songs and everything, they had tremendous, harmonies.
Yeah,
with between them all.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of vocal restraint as well. You could tell they were all working with each other to be at the same volume to all.
Is that right? Restraint. That sounds a bit wrong.
Well, yeah, because it's also you've got some people got to restrain themselves because they may sing louder than others, and what I mean is that the blend was right. Everybody performed to not upstage anybody else. That's what I mean. It was all very much
harmonious.
It was
singing harmoniously in harmony.
Yeah, in harmony. Harmoniously in harmony.
The harmonies were harmonious.
Oh.
Harmonious.
Oh.
We
do we?
They do. They did do.
Yeah, they did. I mean,
yeah, they did.
Which is, sometimes when these productions are new musicals, if it's cast wrong, it can really affect a production, because you could get somebody that wants to show off or wants to be that person that everybody remembers on stage, and you can't afford to have that on something that's actually a timepiece and it's a production that needs key characters to shine, and equally everybody else shone with what they were doing and how they were performing it. All the bit parts and the little parts. What I will say is when they entered the stage, you knew they were those other characters. Even though they'd been in the ensemble, the next minute when one of them was like becoming
David
Letterman, yeah, or the lawyer, or the banker, or all those different characters became strong, and it's almost like they popped out of their other overalls that they were wearing and became these other characters, really.
Have you popped?
Yeah. And also, quite cleverly, a lot of the ensemble were cover characters for the main four.
Yeah.
They were swings for all of the other characters, which...
we saw that in Heathers as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you knew who would double up for the others because they looked very similar.
And it's very important when it's a production that's almost exposed, really, because it's one of those productions that you can't really hide. You haven't got 35 in the cast and it's saturated with people, and you can have 5 people off stage waiting as covers to cover those roles.
It was still a large cast, sort of.
But you need it in the sense of that actually somebody could walk into that role and you not have to worry as a cast. It's a bit like Heathers. Heathers is similar, that if somebody took ill before the production started, somebody else could do that role and then still do the ensemble bit.
Yeah, it would affect choreography as well, I suppose.
It would, yeah.
If one dropped out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's because it's so tight. You haven't got that safety net really in this sort of production.
Yes, I thought everyone was just on their game when we went to see it. I was just completely blown away with how long they were constantly singing and on the stage and moving about. Well, when I say moving about, I just mean the choreography of everything. I think everyone did a tremendous job, particularly the main four. And I'll have to pinpoint them simply because they delivered the characters' journeys and the characters' emotions, whereas the ensemble, you didn't really get the emotions there because they were only like in character for like a couple of minutes singing a song and then
Exactly.
they were changing, so you didn't get chance to explore those dynamics and depths of a character. In some of the songs, like Carol's Helium, that's such a lovely, I don't know if it's a ballad or what, but it's a lovely song, and it's one of those iconic songs that I think everyone will remember when this does the tour, when this gets more people turning out to see it, when it becomes bigger. I think Helium will be one of the greatest songs from this.
Yeah, you can see this being used in some of these songs being used in people's audition tapes or things to show their vocal abilities, because some of the songs do test them, and actually there's a lot of emotion built into the songs, and it's quite interesting because there's a lot of heart gone into this production, and like you were saying, it's about Carol's story. You really do see her go through every emotion you can think of.
Well, it's her journey rather than Larry's. The story's about Larry, but it's Carol's journey.
Yeah, totally is.
And I think that's a really nice take to it.
Yeah.
Especially if you assume it's about this guy who has this great idea.
Yeah.
Yes, it's him going through it, but
it's actually from Carol's perspective.
And I think that confused me to begin with, because I did assume it was about Larry.
Yeah, of course.
Well, you would, wouldn't you? He's the one that did it.
You do. You do, because you're presented with the chair on the way in. It's all about 42 balloons,
and
it's all about him, and he's wanting to do this amazing feat, and things like that.
Yeah, and to have them write it on Carol's viewpoint to drive the story as well.
It's showing her selflessness. It's her showing that she's giving up everything to allow him to do this.
And also because of how tragic his life ended, the story continues, and the only way you can continue it really is by having it from somebody else's viewpoint, where they can then look back and also look forward.
Yeah, and it also, because actually the story would end sooner than actually
Too many actuallys there.
Yeah, sorry. It would mean that the story came to an end earlier than it actually did in the musical, because obviously...
Well, the story essentially is about hope and having to achieve something, where in real life, once Larry realised that he's done that, there was no point to him, so he took his own life.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, what the musical is trying to show or teach people is that you can still have that dream, and you can keep going, and
that life carries on, and
exactly.
That there's more. You're seeing the next step, really. You're seeing the next part of the production, rather of the story, rather than it ending at that almost.
And also, you don't really want a musical that's a tragedy where you're left feeling, oh, that's a bit sad,
Exactly.
So I can understand why they chose Carol to drive the story forward.
Yeah, and from a dramatic point of view, the timing of where they placed the finding out that Larry committed suicide and all those sort of parts of it, it was done in such a way that you felt for Carol because of everything she'd been through to enable him to do everything he needed, and then tragically, he's gone. And I think you get to see that he's still inspired people to want to do things with the boy at the end, where it's wanting to aspire to dream.
It's
really
showing that your actions have consequences for other people, and then they can see that you might not think good of yourself, that you've not achieved anything, but to someone else you've achieved great things, something that they could only dream of. And even Carol gets a number in this where she's singing like, maybe it should have been like 84 balloons, and
both gone
she
up.
should have gone up as well, because she's actually seeing that this guy who she supported do that, he's the one doing it, and she's looking from the ground up. Right, shall we talk about the props and the costumes?
Yeah, I think we should. Costume-wise, it was spot on.
Yeah,
it
all
was
80s fashion.
Everything was of the time.
Shell suits,
boiler suits.
very colourful.
Very
cardigans and stuff.
Yeah,
as well.
cardigans, mustard grey jackets, all the things that, and almost a nod to the 70s with the like flared jeans. It was like would be, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just people still didn't get rid of things they wore at the end of the 70s. There was almost still a little nod. Even the mum was more 70s than she was 80s. It felt like she was still wearing what she'd always wear.
Still looks a bit 60s.
Yeah.
But the thing is with like clothes, although you assume that just because they're in the 80s, they're wearing certain things, but that's like 10 years.
Yeah, exactly.
And there is like a lap over.
It's like the iconic 80s bedroom with the really blocky wallpaper and the with triangles and squares and different colours and all that. That didn't happen in everybody's house. A lot of people lived with what they already had. They didn't just redecorate because we're now in the 80s.
And there was different fashions as well.
Yeah, exactly.
But also, this is America, so they had the style before we did in the UK because we normally follow.
Yeah, exactly. And also they weren't as probably experimental as we saw. People in London dressing differently to the rest of the country. People. It felt right for the time and the place.
Well, that was a lot of waffle just to get to the point that it was all right.
Yeah. But also, I suppose, haircuts and things like that, there was attention to detail in that respect. I feel like they were right as well. Was there a mullet?
There
There was
was
definitely
a
a mullet.
mullet,
There was definitely a mullet, but there was also, there was a lot of
perm.
There was a lot of pigtails, a lot of almost like when you saw Madonna wearing her hair in bunches, or all those holiday.
When did I ever see Madonna in bunches?
Well, you know what I mean. As in, it felt very Cyndi Lauper. It felt very. I think it was. It felt like there was the odd perm here and there, and it felt it felt right. I certainly remember it well.
Did you have a perm?
I didn't have a perm. My mum did.
Oh wow!
A really tight perm.
Ooh, nasty perm.
Yeah, I'll never forget the day I came home from school and she's got a nasty tight perm, and I did ask her what she'd done to herself.
What was her answer? She
didn't know herself, but she was stuck with it for months because she couldn't get rid of it. I think when she went to sleep, she bounced back up. There was that many springs. All tight perm.
Props wise, there were just handheld things that they brought in, either a clipboard or the camera, or the video camera, I should say. There was one scene where they went shopping and they brought all the equipment. So there was a lot of boxes on.
On a shopping trolley. Yeah, on a shopping trolley.
They brought all those in, like cylinders and everything.
And even the shopping trolley looked like an old one from a supermarket in that era. It was quite interesting. They didn't just use one from Aldi or whatever. They used one that felt like it was from that era, and I think that was good. That was nice.
And they had that money gun thing
that worked.
That actually worked. It's the first time we've seen one that worked.
The amount of productions we've seen who have a money gun and it never works.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's just like a wet fish hitting the floor. It's just not.
And at the moment one of them brought it out, I thought, oh, here we go. This is where it's all going to go on its face.
But
it worked.
Although Carol was left holding it.
Oh yeah, because one
of the ensembles went to take it off with her,
but just missed it.
Missed it by a handshake.
So Carol chucked it.
She threw it off stage. I mean, she did it fine, but we could tell that it was like somebody should have took that off me.
Yeah,
and they didn't. Yeah. So they probably have to get another money gun. Then it won't work the next night.
Probably. And also, it worked in Unfortunate the week before.
Yes, it did.
When she did that, it worked there. Well, I don't know what else to say in this little section. I think we've summed it up really well.
Yeah, I think. I suppose with the blinds, with the things that they used, they just had desks and chairs and things that were brought on to show
Yeah, they're set pieces, aren't they?
Set pieces, but they got the right props on the. There was a lot of paperwork, there was a lot of letters, and there was a lot of things that were brought on.
Oh, and Carol's mum, when she had that cocktail,
Yes,
she started singing her little song.
she did. Yeah,
When your daughter meets a loser, and then she has the cocktail and stuff.
Yeah.
That was. I love that song.
I think that was the whole point. A lot of the props were iconic,
Yeah.
but they were just there,
Yeah.
and there was a lot of
Well,
moments.
needed.
Yeah, but I think for me, prop use was really interesting because it's very similar to something I talked about in the cabaret episode, where as an ensemble member walked off or walked on, they'd hand the main cast a piece of prop, and you wouldn't notice it's been passed, and then they were just ready for the next scene.
Yeah.
There was a lot of almost effortless movements when it came to props.
Very choreographed.
Choreographed.
Choreographed really well. That's the word.
Yeah, it was almost, I suppose, just calmly put in somebody's hand, or walked off, grabbed a coat and walked off, and the other coat was put on, or everything just. There was nothing left or dropped, or apart from the money gun that was obviously misplaced at one point, but the rest was just so smooth and seamless. It was brilliant.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say,
What the tech is this?
Right, let's talk tech. The technical aspect, because there was a lot on this with the projections and everything else.
Yeah,
like
unexpectedly, we didn't realise there was that much.
Oh, just
tech
cut me
in
off,
a way.
why don't you?
Carry on.
No, go on.
No, I suppose,
Get it out your system.
All right, then.
I won't interrupt.
I suppose we didn't realise how much tech was going to be involved in a way because they kept it back. What you got was a lot of projections that had a lot of work done to projection map the whole space. There was actually some psychedelic moments where felt like you were climbing into his brain a few times. Where they
was that when they were trying to mathematically equate how much helium they'd need, how many balloons, and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, we were going through all this. Like it's almost like Einstein's brain on stage. The whole stage became projection mapped with all his thoughts and all his placements and what he was going to do.
I remember that song because they did like a mass montage.
It was a proper montage of how he got to be how he was going to do it. Because
that was again another like piss take of like a
it
film.
It really was,
montage of.
And this was all before the band were revealed. So you were like, this is amazing. All these things that we're doing, we're gonna, and some of the other parts of it were. You just felt like you were surrounded by him and what he was thinking, and it enhanced that whole sort of process. But it was quite interesting that they didn't overuse the projections. They didn't project for every scene. No. They didn't project for every backdrop for.
I tell you what I did.
Scene
what I did like on the projections of this one. There's a couple of them. When Larry was in his chair and he was going higher and higher.
That was my favourite.
You
bit
had
as well.
the whole how many how high it'd gone.
Yeah, the altitude.
So like 7,000 feet, 8,000 feet, and then got to 16,000 feet, and then he came back down again.
For me,
so
it almost felt like
in reverse.
For me, it felt like the whole audience was in a lift.
Yeah,
it felt like you kept going higher and higher.
But it did. But it also allowed you, as like a viewer, to feel like slightly panicky, like,
exactly.
Oh, what's going to happen now? What's going to change? What's going to, you know?
And then when he rushed and got higher up than he expected, and
it was like you were running out of air yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And also there was another bit when it was the David Letterman's one, and they did the whole video thing. So
that was brilliant.
They recorded that live, and that was projected onto the back wall.
Yeah. And the thing is,
we'd seen something similar when we went to see Roisin Murphy.
Yes,
live, and she did that.
Yeah,
with
the blend of live video work with projections as well. And with the altitude raising, I think what I found really useful was not only were you just going up through the altitude and you were going higher and higher and higher, the look of the stage behind it was getting darker and darker, because when you were getting out of the atmosphere, you were getting darker into space, and it felt real. So when he was like lost his glasses or dropped something and all those things that went off, you felt the panic at that level.
Well, it was very creative, because he was just sat on a stage in that chair with balloons attached, and it was as if he was rising.
Yeah, he really was.
It's the only way they could get him to rise without obviously rising.
Yeah, definitely.
Being risen like a loaf of bread.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, and like
Are you just going to agree with me on any crap I say?
No, well, no, but it's the...
Risen like a loaf of bread.
They did, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk about something else in a minute on the risen bit. But yeah, the David Letterman setting and scene, it just had so much energy, and you felt like you had stepped into a proper American interview, and that's not easy to do.
And he used the audience members to be part of that as well.
And the whole space almost changed to show you that, and I think that was quite clever because it was unexpected that you'd go to that level, really.
Yeah.
And I think, just to have some stage boxes on wheels to become seats and the things that it wasn't, we didn't have the couch or anything. There was no, but it had all the elements of that interview. But you still felt like it came out of nowhere, really, because you didn't expect it.
Well, it did, didn't he?
Yeah.
Because the guy playing David Letterman, he was obviously one of the ensemble guys. But did he run up and jump up to the middle of the band at this point and get changed, or did he come in from the side? I can't remember.
I think he came in from the side. Oh no, he came in from the top, didn't he?
Yeah, from the side of the top where the band was.
Yeah,
because he was getting ready, and then he did his piece to camera.
Yeah,
at the centre. Yeah, that must have been it. What should we talk about the little the thing that didn't go quite well?
Yeah.
So they had 4 huge helium balloons. Well, there were huge balloons that they took out from the bottom of the stage.
Yeah, so the stage had some false trapdoors, didn't it, I think?
Yeah, go on.
No, you carry on.
So when they got them out, they were filled from beneath. Only one of them didn't fully... It must have got tangled or something. It was struggling to fill up.
Yeah, I think the technology of them was a bit similar to, I see these sumo suits where they're like really thin material and they've got a fan in them. And I think what had happened is the fan had got trapped, so it wasn't actually taking any air into that one, whereas the others were pulling in the air and becoming really big balloons. This one at the front was actually not inflating, and then,
or the material was twisted.
Yeah, something wasn't letting enough air in, and eventually it took a while, but I think one of the ensemble realised and just lifted it, moved it enough, and then it became fully inflated.
Yeah.
And I mean that yet again, that it wouldn't have mattered if it was just visually obvious that was meant to be a
technical thing where you were more probably focused on that one balloon not filling out right than what the scene was about.
Yeah, exactly. But that's some I know.
But we're bound to notice that because we're looking for this to critique.
Yeah, and not just that. You tend when you watch a lot of theatre, you tend to notice something. You think, I don't think the cast are meant to do that.
Yeah,
and I think you can see that. You can see when somebody struggles or just tries to there's nothing to see here.
Or they forget to.
Whereas general audience members may not have even noticed it, but to us, you can see that there's something slightly different. They probably sat
in the stalls, probably didn't because of the angle. But yeah, we were looking down and we could see it. But this is all part of the live experience, isn't it?
It is, and it's how, for me, it's how you get out of that successfully without really drawing attention to it. And I think the ensemble picked the right moment because they were all almost moving around these big balloons, so it didn't really look out of place.
But in a production with a lot of tech as well, something's bound to go wrong. If it's not going to be that, it'll be the projections or some things not working.
And I was going to say as well, it's not just with a lot of tech, it's actually with a lot of tech with nowhere to hide. Because this is almost a production where everything was so specific that you couldn't hide. There was no smoke and mirrors here. Each set piece was individual and you would have noticed something out of place a little bit. If say the band trapdoor at the back didn't lift, it would have made a difference because where would the chair go? It's like there's a lot of things that happen on this production where it would have really mattered if something hadn't have happened where it should. And I think that's why it puts pressure on the cast and the crew to actually make sure it pulls it off, really.
But when it works, it does.
Oh,
really good.
Totally, yeah.
Now, we've explained a little bit about the exciting stuff about the tech. Is there anything else you want to discuss about, like the lighting or, the normal bog standard stuff we do talk about?
I mean, sound was perfect for this production. The sound engineer was brilliant.
Singing,
yeah.
I could hear everything.
Vocals, music, the blend
on.
was right. Everything felt put together well.
Oh, did you notice when we saw Wicked and when we saw Unfortunate, either side of this one, whenever the females are singing quite high, the beginning bit is always turned off, and then it comes back on again.
Yeah, there was a few.
Clips at the beginning.
Yeah,
never got any of that with this.
No, there was a lot. You could tell that the sound engineers knew when somebody was walking on stage, and it was switched on before they walked on stage, so you didn't even notice a change of audience, a change of audible. There was nothing audible that you knew that they'd I've got to put somebody on because they're walking on stage and they need to talk. There was no dialogue missed or, all those bits that matter, because normally entrances are the strongest part of the dialogue. When somebody walks on stage, it does matter. So it was really well done, and lighting wise, it was brilliant. I mean, it's very hard to talk about the lighting too much because it was what it needed. The projections fueled it, and then the lighting did the same. Really, it was all very to the point.
It also had shadow work, and people where the band was, they had like projections of things that were happening outside of the space as well. So they were projected. I can't remember what particular scene that was, but do you remember?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Like dance numbers.
Yes, they were just. It was like they enhanced the performance by.
But that was in Act 1 before we knew there was a band there.
Yeah. They repeated some of the dance in silhouette, so it actually created a bigger space almost.
A bit like how the Drifters did.
Yeah, similar.
When the Drifters were going off backstage, well, in front of the stage to perform into the audience, you just had the shadows of them doing it.
Yeah, definitely.
That had something similar here.
Yeah, they did. I mean, it does make me wonder, they must, a bit like in Dear Evan Hansen, because the video work they use in that, similar to this, it's of the person or the people that are main characters. They must have had to refilm it for the people that are covers.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have been able to just press play again if somebody else was those main characters. You've got to.
I was thinking that with the guy playing Dave
You'd have to
Letterman.
refilm it again with a different one, and you'd have to have done a lot of prep work to make sure that you've got almost every eventuality if needed. When you've got all this video work and you're using a lot of things with those visuals of that person, you've got to make sure you've got everything ready for somebody else, or it's really important because it does matter.
Oh, definitely.
And now it's time for our Rewind Rewatch.
Rewind Rewatch, Richard. And do you know what? I think you're probably going to say the same as me. So shall we do it at the same time?
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Oh, you counting us in?
Oh, shall I do it?
Go on.
1, 2, 3.
The
whole
lot.
thing. Maybe not the same words, but we got it right.
Yeah.
Definitely. See this one again.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm really excited about this one.
I wish it, and I hope it gets recognised for the production it is and how good
definitely.
It is, really.
Especially when, like, a bit like myself, we didn't know too much about it. But once we came away from it, it was like, I can't believe we've just seen this gem here.
Yeah, and for me, this was a production where I got a gut feeling, where I thought we need to see it in its early entirety, because I missed so many other productions where I've not actually gone with my gut and gone to see them in their first instances in places like Manchester. And I just knew that if we don't, we might miss something quite special. So I'm glad I stuck to my guns and just said I need to go with my gut and go.
Yeah.
Because
well done to you and your gut.
Sometimes it's a good gut. But it's things like I
don't really want your bad guts.
No, we don't really want that.
Let's not go there.
But it's a bit like, this is a similar feeling to Mrs. Doubtfire.
I was just about to say that, yeah.
This is a gut feeling that we went to Manchester to see that, and that was another one. I missed Anne Juliet in Manchester. I also missed Operation Mincemeat before it moved to London, and I'm going to try my best not to do that again, to see them in their infancy, because I want to see them progress and become bigger.
Yeah, definitely. So, I can't wait for this one to tour. Is it touring, or is it just there for a bit?
I think at the end of the day, this is still
still green, isn't it?
It's still green, but it's also still at the Lowry until the 19th of
May.
So it's still there for the next few weeks. I suppose the future's not been decided yet for it, but it's nice to know that
I think it will go on ticket sales, won't it?
Yeah.
Whether to.
Yeah, but not just that. I think as well it's.
Well, I didn't think it was just that.
I think it'll build, because it'll create a bit of a buzz about it, really.
Well, if we keep talking about it,
and hopefully it flies high.
Moving on to our final segment, as we say,
call this a show?
Summary then, Richard. Now, before we sum up, let's just nip it in the bud here. Other song lists, which was your favourite? I've actually downloaded off iTunes the 8 tracks.
Got an 8-track, have you?
Oh, God.
The 8-track.
Out of the 34 songs, they've released 8.
And hopefully they do an album for the whole production.
I think they will do.
They need to, because it's definitely one that I'd go to, listen to again, hear it.
It's on my phone. It's non-stop. You can also get it on YouTube. They've done.
Yeah, but I mean, for me, it's more like as an entirety. I always like musical albums to have the whole production, start to finish, because I almost like to learn it as a whole sometimes. Yeah. So fingers crossed they do.
I love the very beginning of the build-up and the whole what makes a man want to go out and buy a lawn chair, what makes a woman go out and buy 42 weather balloons.
I think for me it's Helium and Up and Away. They're my two that...
Well, I've got quite a lot, to be honest.
Go on then.
Helium is definitely one of the standout ones. Somebody's Story, I think that's the Cowell's song, I think it is. Yes, when your daughter falls in love with a loser. That was a great one. Something as Crazy as This. That's where I think it's the one where Carol's talking or singing about wanting 84 balloons, and should she have gone up there as well?
Yeah.
And how crazy it is to have fallen in love with the space guy.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, and Lawn Chair Larry. I think that's the one that goes into the whole David Letterman. Lawn Chair Larry, please come on my show.
I think as well, Carol's mum's song.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's Somebody's Story.
Somebody's Story, yeah. I thought it was.
Because that's the one that changed the tempo.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And it was also almost a point in the production where it turned a corner a little bit. It was like, this is where we're going with this. Yeah, but it set you up to realise actually this is more about Carol and her journey than it is about Larry, and I think that was quite good to give you that bit of diversion, really.
I think when watching that, I thought, well, where's this going now?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I did assume it was about Larry, and then I started to notice this is Carol's story, and then when the mum came in and started singing, I thought, okay, so we're spreading this out a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
But it worked.
Yeah, it totally worked. Yeah, and
it didn't drag. In fact, it needed going in there.
Well, I think you always need that perspective from somebody else, and you almost need that common sense, back down to earth, excuse the pun, moment where somebody's questioning and why you're doing something or what you're doing it for, and it's almost like your conscience talking, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's that moment of doubt or self-doubt or and all that.
Yeah, no, I agree there. So to sum up, Richard, 42 Balloons.
I think it was an unexpected, brilliant musical that I'd definitely watch again, and I'd see different things in it. Even though it was such an empty space, small space production, I'd easily watch it again, and thoroughly enjoyed it. And it left me thinking, which is always good.
It's always hard for you as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I struggle.
So to sum up for me and 42 Balloons, this was such a delight, such an unexpected pleasure. And this is going to be probably one of my favourite musicals, up there with the Book of Mormon for me.
Wow.
I know, right?
Wow.
It really is a high contender. You know, it must have been all that helium. I get my jokes in now, shall I? And yes, do you know what? I'm really excited. I'm excited for Jack Godfrey. I'm excited for Ellie Coote, and I can't wait to see what they do next.
Yeah.
Because if it's anything like this, it's going to be a really smash hit. You know? This was such a privilege to watch. Oh, and I'm so excited about it.
You just can't hide it.
No. Scores then, please, Richard, for 42 balloons. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a 16,000-foot highlight spectacular, and 1 being a party bag of 42 burst balloons. What's it going to be?
Well, it's only going to be one thing, and that's a 10 out of 10 from me.
And it's going to be a 10 out of 10 from me, and if I could press the button and have it a gold button with all the stars or whatever they do on, I don't know, I don't want that shite. But yeah, 10 out of 10 for me.
Well, at least Britain has got talent this time.
So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be?
A standing ovation.
Absolutely, it's going to be a standing ovation from me as well.
There we go.
And we did. I'm very high up as well. Almost fell out of my chair.
So there we are. That's our discussion of 42 Balloons, a musical. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Stay tuned as we bring you more of our thoughts
and opinions
on many theatrical delights in future episodes. If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of
Upstage Downstage.
42 Balloons questions how far you would go to make your dreams come true. Is the sky actually the limit? And what happens if it doesn't all go to plan? So Richard, why are you laughing at me?
Because you just sounded like you're going la 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 la. It was just really like
I'm sending people to
life.
sleep.
You need life in it. Come on, Stephen. You were just and I will read this now. That's what it's like.
I'm just reading the auto cue.
That's what you were doing.
2nd of July, 1982. Using a lawn chair and approximately 42 helium-filled weather balloons, truck driver Larry Walters defied all the odds to make his lifelong dream a reality and fly. 2nd of July, 1982. Using a lawn chair and approximately 42 filled helium balloons. No.
And the lottery numbers are
2nd of July, 1982. Using a lawn chair and approximately 42... 2nd of July, 1980. That's it. Yes, it was a lead cast, wasn't it? Him doing stuff for the shadows.
Yeah.
Not the shadow. No.
No.
Cliff Richard does the
Yeah,
shadows.
exactly.
I mean, like
Yeah.
the silhouettes, I should say.
Yeah.
The silhouettes. They're not a band, are they?
The Silhouettes.
Silhouettes.
There might be somewhere.
A band in the 60s. We've had quite a lot to
Rewind.
We've had quite a lot to discuss, haven't we?
We have.
One? Well, they've released out of the 34 songs they've released. They're out of the.
And actually, what happened was you actually.
All those actuallys.
Yeah, love actually.
So, I need to put my teeth in. I need to buy new teeth. I've still got my wooden ones in. We've seen something similar when we actually went to. I'm saying actually now. Yeah, look, we don't have to.
No, we don't.
It doesn't have to talk about. I can edit all that out anyway.
Yeah.
We'll just start with me speaking.
Yeah.
Proportionise.
Proportionising. Do you want it to stop in there?
No, because we haven't finished, have we?
No. 42 Balloons is an uplifting musical by Jack Godfrey and is inspired.
Oh, my battery's running low. Oh, can you believe that?
Well, it's a good job we didn't record anymore.
Why have you stopped?
Well, no, because it had got the noise in the middle of my update, you know. I do apologise for this brief interlude.
Oh, yes, it says plugged in. That's 10%. Okay, well, I'm good to go whenever you are.
On today's episode...
Oh, not all the way up there! Yeah, if I'm all the way up there, then I can just cut all the everything that you've done before.
Have you done breathing? On today's... Fucking hell. If only we could record the intro. On today's episode, we'll be discussing 42...
Got an itchy ear. Come on, we were going to have 3 to record, but I don't think we'll get through 3 now.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing 42 Balloons. We saw this...
and in tomorrow's episode, we'll be discussing 43. We do hope you enjoyed last week's episode where we talked about 41 balloons until Richard popped it.
Stay tuned until we reach 99 red balloons.
Red balloons.
Right. On today's episode, we'll be discussing 42 Balloons. Can I say the musical?
42 red balloons.
The new musical. Musical.
Just put the musical. 42 red balloons, the musical. No, not 42 red balloons. They weren't red.
Whew. On today's episode, we'll be discussing 42 Balloons, the musical. We saw this production at the Lowry Theatre. Salford on the 20th of April 2024. Lisa, why is it so hard? You've got more giggles to that than ever.
I collect them at the weekend. I've only got 42 giggles.
When he's got 43, that's when we're worried.
That'll be next week.
42 Balloons is an uplift.